Hey guys, this is Joel with Sharp Edge Financial. Welcome to this video series on various financial topics that are relevant to attorneys. Today we'll talk about how to build and maintain a budget. So before we get into it, let's just go over some quick compliance language. Obviously, we don't provide tax, legal, or accounting advice. So budgeting is part of obviously the big picture of financial planning, but more specifically part of defensive planning. It's one of those pillars of your foundation. So really important to address it. And as you'll see, really important to address it really for a lot of different financial goals. Before we get into the how to build a budget, let's talk about why someone would want to build a budget. Well, it could actually be for a lot of different reasons. One, maybe you're trying to buy your first house and you're trying to see how much house you can afford, but also how long it will take you to accumulate the down payment for that house. Maybe you're a little bit further along in life and you're trying to buy your second house. Maybe you're trying to pay off your student loans and you're trying to see how much you can objectively allocate towards those loans. Or maybe you simply want to know where your money is going because maybe you feel like you're not saving enough for retirement or for college funding, things like that. So what you'll find is that a lot of financial planning goals actually start with making a budget. So now let's get into the how to build a budget. So building a budget is a three-step process. And the first step is to organize your spending. And that in and of itself is twofold. So one, you're going to want to find a budgeting tool that can aggregate all of your credit card and bank transactions in one place. From there, you're going to go through these transactions and categorize them. So for example, your Chick-fil-A transactions are going to go into restaurants. Your Netflix transactions are going to go into entertainment. Your electric bill will go into utilities, etc. And I guess you could technically just print off your statements or just go online and do it that way, but aggregating all of your different accounts in one place just makes it a lot easier. So use a budgeting tool. I personally use eMoney, but there's some free ones out there like mint.com is one that I've heard that I've personally used in the past that works well, and it's free. So that's number one. Number two, you're going to want to create a document where you can write down your monthly average spend for each of those categories. So that this will become your actual budget, and it's going to become your actual targets for each of those categories, as you can see here on the screen. So if your average monthly spend for electric was $225, that becomes kind of your target. This could be an Excel spreadsheet, this could be a Word document, or it could be plain old paper. It really doesn't matter. What I usually recommend though is that you go back and look at the last 90 days worth of transactions for that category. So if you're in your budgeting tool and you're doing the grocery category, you're going to want to go back and look at your Whole Foods transaction, Kroger, Central Market, Costco, and total all those up together. And the software should allow you to do that for the last 90 days. And you divide that number by 3 to find your average. So if it was 3,600 for all those transactions, divide that by 3, 1,200, and that becomes your monthly target for groceries. If you'd like the actual file that I use that's displayed on the screen here, feel free to email me and I'm happy to share with you, joel@sharpedgefinancialtx.com. One thing that I'd also like to add to a budget is called a buffer spending category. So it's for things that are miscellaneous that just kind of pop up randomly. Think about car repairs. Car repairs, they happen. We know they'll happen. We just don't know when. So they're hard to predict. Personally, what goes into my buffer category are vet bills. For those of you who have golden doodles, I have one at home and she loves to eat things that she's not supposed to. And she ends up at the vet and, we have to pay to get it out of there. So I'll spare you the details, but anyways, we spend a lot of money on vet bills. So that's kind of where we factor those costs in. Thought about adding here as a line item on our budget, but anyway, so that's why you would want to create a buffer category. So that's step number one, to organize your spending. Step number two is to further categorize those expenses between essential and discretionary expenses. So essential expenses are expenses that are essential to living, like housing, basic food, basic clothes, utilities, things like that. Discretionary expenses are things that you could technically cut out and still be able to live. So for example, vacation, shopping, dining out, etc. And the reason that you want to further separate your expenses between essential and discretionary is twofold. One, if you're trying to cut back on expenses, simply knowing where your money is going, which is step number one, is not enough. You need to further categorize the things that are essential and the things that are discretionary, because it's a lot easier to cut back on things like food delivery services than it is to cut back on your mortgage payment or your car payment. So that's number one. Number two is it allows you to determine how big of an emergency fund you need. So in the industry, we typically recommend having 3 to 6 months worth of essential expenses saved up in a high yield savings account or money market account as an emergency fund. And if you think about why that is because think about why you would need to access that emergency fund. Maybe you lost your job, maybe you have a health problem, or maybe you're caring for someone that does. So you're probably not traveling the world, living your best life and spending all this money, right? You're probably hunkering down, trying to save money. So that's why we recommend 3 to 6 months worth of essential expenses. And by the way, the Excel file that I use, it automatically splits up the categories between essential and discretionary. So super simple, not really an extra step there. So after step one and step two, you should have a pretty good start on a good budget. Now what? Never look at it again, right? Well, that's what most people do. We obviously don't recommend that. The reality is you have to constantly monitor your expenses and review and update your budget. So 2 recommendations here. Number one, I always recommend to at least go through your bank and credit card transactions once per month. Doing this will not only help you determine if you're on track to meet your spending targets that you determined in your budget when you organize your spending, but it'll also allow you to spot potential fraudulent transactions or inaccurate transactions. I'll give you an example. I went to a restaurant, a lunch joint here in Dallas a couple years ago, and the iPad screen was broken when I was trying to check out, and the lady just said, "Just tap the button and you'll be good to go." I said, "Okay, maybe I was too hungry. I wasn't really thinking straight." So I did that, and sure enough, 2 weeks later, I look at my bank transactions, my credit card transactions, and I saw a $220 charge for, I think it was like 3 tacos that I bought. So sure enough, I called them and they had charged an extra $200 tip on top of my bill. So, I'm all about tipping, but that's a bit outrageous. So anyways, point of the story is review your transactions to spot for that. Recommendations number 2 is to review your budget at least once per year. And the reason we want to do that is because life happens, things change. Maybe you have a new child expense this year. Maybe you upgraded your car, so it's more expensive than it was, or for the simple fact that things just get more expensive over time. I personally had to update my budget pretty much on every category this past year simply because of inflation. So, all right, guys, that's all I had for you. That's all I have for you guys on budgeting. Stay tuned for more videos. If you'd like to subscribe to our Sharper Thoughts newsletter, you can follow me on LinkedIn. Thanks for watching.